Welcome to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast with Lawrence Manaig, where we explore the ketogenic lifestyle and how it can improve your physical and mental health. Each week, we bring you valuable insights and advice from experts to help you on your journey to a healthier lifestyle. This episode is brought to you by BasicKetogenicLifestyle.com, where Lawrence coaches individuals with depression to reverse their symptoms and achieve a healthier, happier life using an evidence-based approach. So sit back, relax, and join us as we dive deep into the world of ketones and coffee. Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast today and never miss an episode.
So excited for this. A year ago, actually, I had the privilege of interviewing our guest on the show, and his story has been a validating experience for me since then. And here is our guest introducing now. Our guest today is a carnivore coach who focuses on helping individuals who suffer from anxiety, depression, and other mood-related conditions through the carnivore way of eating. What's special about him is he himself has recovered from severe depression and has found relief through this miraculous approach in lifestyle. Today, we are blessed to have the opportunity to interview him. His mission is to help others overcome their own challenges and improve their overall well-being. Please welcome our guest, the Carnivore Coach. I'm here with Brett Lloyd. Brett, welcome to the show,
Thank you so much, Lawrence. It's a pleasure to speak with you and your audience, and I'm ready to talk.
It's wonderful. Wonderful to have you back, sir. Thank you for being so gracious of your time. And when I asked you to come on back on the show, you did not hesitate. You said, "Let's do it. When can I do it?" And now we're here today. And the first time you were here, you were, great, actually so great for the show. And since then, like I said, it validated this lifestyle for me. After that, I went on to interview more people who had the same success like you did and made a lot of great connection. Today, we have a little more listeners of the show, and I believe that we have to share your full story in detail to get the full picture from, if you want to start with your upbringing, relationship with food back then, and we'll talk about your mission to help people at the end. But this is where stories are so valuable. It brings us hope for the future, a lot of hope. And you're such a warrior, my friend, and you had gone through so much, and to be able to rise up and find a way to get out of that dark place is so inspiring for us. So for our listeners who haven't heard your story, so why don't we start there?
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your backstory and where it all started for you.
Well, I grew up in a lower middle class home. My parents had an enormous vegetable garden. We had fresh vegetables year round. We had plenty of meat. We were basically living the food pyramid to perfection, the standard American diet as it's drawn up. Every plate had meat, had fresh vegetables. It was colorful, it was pretty, and it was filling for the most part. But out of the four of us, my dad passed away in 2020 after 20 plus years of type 2 diabetes. My little baby 6 foot tall sister suffered from ulcerative colitis. It almost killed her. She now today still deals with IBS and other issues because she won't go carnivore because she's done research. Anyway, my mom suffered a number of issues, had to have her gallbladder removed. She just had a lot of physical issues throughout her whole life. Here recently, she's 84. She gave up sugar for the most part, and it's improved her quality of life immensely. Myself, I suffered from major depression with psychotic features for 43 years of my life. I suffered from chronic anxiety for 43 years, and I suffered from horrible insomnia for 43 years. Thankfully, all of that has been completely resolved and eliminated through the carnivore lifestyle. Eating meat and drinking water healed me entirely. But in the interim, I suffered horrible depression. I was very self-destructive, very self-sabotaging. I at one time had a very promising career in the psychology field, and I sabotaged that out of existence. I'm a musician. I had several jobs in decent bands over the years prior to the carnivore way of eating, where things would be going really well, and well, I guess some part of me couldn't stand that, and I would always do or say something to screw it all up. Um, a long history of self sabotage. Um, I was on psychiatric medications for 23 years. I took them as prescribed. I was first diagnosed with major depression in 1990 at River Park Psychiatric Hospital after my life became unmanageable due to depression and mental illness. Um, I wasn't a very good person. I was an angry, depressed person. I was angry all the time, pretty much. I voted class grouch in my high school class, my senior class, and I remember at the time that really bothered me a lot. And then later, with some honest reflection, I realized I'd earned it completely. Um, in January of 2015, I weighed 285 pounds, excuse me, 289 pounds. I was on 7 different psych meds, and the last psychiatrist I'll ever have, not named Dr. Georgia Eade or Dr. Chris Palmer, told me that I should seriously consider electroshock therapy and or a long-term hospitalization because I wasn't getting better. I was just getting worse. I took every medicine as prescribed for all those years, and all it did was make me crazier and more obese. Um, I was fortunate to find out in February of 2015 that medical marijuana treated my symptoms better than any pharmaceutical medication I ever took, much to my surprise. Um, and so over the next 3 years, I did low carb and utilized medical marijuana. And by the end of 2015, I was off the antipsychotic medications and the antidepressants. By the end of 2016, I was off the Ativan that I took as prescribed for 8.5 years. That was not fun to come off of. And at the end of 2017, I was off the trazodone, which is what I took for insomnia for 8.5 years. I slept like a baby when I took that stuff, but I woke up with a drug hangover every single morning. So I've been pharmaceutical free now, with the exception of a couple of instances of needing antibiotics for upper respiratory infection. And other than that, I've not had any pharmaceutical medication since 2017. I over the time period, the 3 years from 2015 to the spring of 2018, I walked off 94 pounds. Was eating low carb. I might have been able to heal myself with just the low carb, but my wife and I, not nutrition experts, and we thought fat was bad. Boy, were we wrong.
Right.
My wife would make these big piles of loose ground beef with mozzarella cheese, but she would always strain the fat off of it. So who knows how much quicker I might have healed if we had just known you got to eat the fat. In June of 2015, I heard Dr. Jordan Peterson describe in a Joe Rogan clip how his daughter Michaela had figured out if she only ate beef, salt, and water, her horrible depression and horrible arthritis symptoms vanished. They didn't improve, they went away. She was in full remission. Now, if it's anybody but Dr. Jordan Peterson telling me this I'm watching this video, I'm changing the channel because, hey, just eating meat, that's nuts. Who could just eat meat? That's crazy. But because it was Dr. Jordan Peterson, a man who I believe has incredible integrity, who part of his shtick is being honest, or at least not lying. And when he told me that in that clip, I was just stunned. I didn't know that he himself suffered from chronic mental illness, that it ran thick in his family. I thought he was just tired because he was writing all the time. Um, and because of that, I started investigating. And the next person I found on YouTube was Dr. Sean Baker. And again,
Mm-hmm.
here you have an individual, an orthopedic doctor who did trauma surgery in the Afghan war. They just don't let anybody do that. And then come to find out that did a stint in the Army before that, where he was an officer and had the codes to our nuclear launch systems. He was in the silo. They just don't put anybody in that kind of position of responsibility unless they have incredible integrity. And he was telling me in this Joe Rogan episode that he was blessed to be on how he had seen countless people eliminate chronic mental illness from their life entirely. And then I heard Amber O'Hearn give a talk in 2017 when she explained in a way this guitar player could understand how, as a species, we literally came down out of the trees because we started eating meat and that we grew these energy demanding brains in our current skeletal structure by just eating meat.
Mm.
And I looked at my wife uh, early July and was like, I have to start doing this. I have to give this a try because this might be the answer we've been looking for. And so July 16th, 2018, that was my very first day, zero carb. And today, as I speak to you, today is my 1725th day of eating meat and
Mm.
drinking water. I've had zero cheat days. And let's see, on the 10th day of eating meat and drinking water, I woke up without joint pain for the first time as an adult. And I took early
Mm.
morning walks then. And I'm skipping down the sidewalk, giggling like a little boy because at 57 years old, giggling like a little boy because it feels good and it nothing hurts.
Mm.
I was never diagnosed with arthritis or anything, but I'd fallen down and gone boom a few times. I'm a lead guitar player. I would jump up on tables at gigs, and sometimes the tables did their job, and sometimes the tables said, "No, you're going down, man." And that
Mm.
is since you protect your guitar and you keep on playing, and if you walk around like a question mark for a couple of weeks, that's okay. That's rock and roll. So I had some aches and pains. I woke up the 10th morning and they were all gone, just gone.
Mm.
Nothing hurt anywhere. Uh, that was just after 10 days. I also lost my sugar and carb cravings after 10 days. I haven't desired sugar not one moment since, nor carbs. Um, and then on the 24th day, I still can get emotional about this. I'm taking a walk, and it's like somebody flipped a switch.
Mm.
And all that rage, and all that anger, and all that frustration, that sadness and darkness that had haunted me for all those decades, the things that kept me from getting past that barrier of illness and doing and becoming and being the person I wanted to be, being the musician I wanted to be, that I couldn't ever break through that. All of it just went away. It left me completely. And it was replaced by a waterfall of joy and
Mm.
happiness that has not left me since. Not for even one moment has it left me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I am so excited to do these interviews like I do, because people need to know you're not
Yeah,
broken. You're not a genetic error.
absolutely.
You don't have a character defect. Your mom and dad didn't make a mistake. You, like me, were taught to eat things we should never have put into our mouth the first time. And we paid a
Mm-hmm.
horrible price for it. But the answer is a dietary answer, and it works. You eliminate inflammatory garbage from your life, from your diet, and your body's free to repair itself. And I'll never go back to eating garbage. Never, ever, ever. There's no taste, there's no texture, there's no social setting worth me putting my mental health at risk.
Mhm.
And I thank you for this opportunity to share a condensed version of my experience.
Man, I can never get tired of stories like that, Brett. Honest to God, somebody who suffered from severe depression, you said anxiety, insomnia for 40 plus years, and to be able to stand here today, talk to our listeners symptom free, I believe we can save a lot of people's lives. I can say that because I was in a very dark place as well. And for, to give people perspective, even one day in a dark place can feel like years.
Forever.
And you think you're never gonna get out of that. And for anyone who's listening today, listening to this story, that's suffering right now, you don't need to, right? There's a way. And there's a lot of cases that, you know, especially Coach Brett here, who has really reversed their symptoms, put the severe depression in remission, get off their meds. There's hope. There's a lot of hope here, and that's why I love bringing you on. Can never get tired of that. It's interesting that uh, when you were first on the show, you said it's interesting that your doctors, you yourself, didn't make that connection between the lifestyle and the mood improvements that you had in the beginning. Back then, when you changed your lifestyle for the first time, um, and you also talked about in the beginning that I think it's also great to point out that when you first made that switch into more of less carbohydrates and Atkins diet, you said, when you had lost about 90 pounds in the beginning. Is that right?
I did Atkins in 2000, from 2009 to
Mhm,
2010, and I
mhm.
lost 35 pounds. I was able to go to my
35.
30-year high school class reunion.
Right.
I was able to start performing again. I actually wrote a couple of faith-based albums and was performing and speaking in churches.
Hmm.
And then I
Incredible.
foolishly decided that I missed ice cream, and then if I got fat again, I could just go back on Atkins. Boy, was that a dumb idea.
Yeah, yeah. You went and then you fell back into depression.
Oh, well, I never was out of depression. It's just my quality of
Yeah,
life improved. I'm
was
still
better. Mm.
suffering, but not to the same degree that I was before. But after I started eating coconut cakes and ice cream again, yeah, I had some really horrible experiences. And from the
Yeah.
summer of July, or excuse me, summer of 2010 to February of 2015 was the darkest time ever of my life, and
Mm.
it was very hard on my wife as well because she had to live with a
Yeah.
crazy man, and she
Yeah.
suffered a she suffered a lot as well because of my behavior being so poor and I'm being so angry all the time. And then there was the fact that my depression got so bad I could not accurately perceive my environment. My beautiful wife would say, "It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day." But what I would hear would be filtered and twisted and
Mm-hmm.
changed and never in my favor by my illness, to where what
Mm-hmm.
I truly heard was something more along the lines of, "Oh, yeah, it looks like it's going to be another beautiful day. That's just great." And of course, I love my wife. "Honey, what's
Mm.
wrong?" And she
Yeah.
would look at me
Yeah.
like the crazy guy I was and talk to me like I was okay. And, well, what do you mean, what's wrong? I just told you it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. So
Mm.
there was constant conflict because she couldn't understand me at all. And there were times when what she was saying was not what I was hearing. So
Mm.
there was an enormous amount of tension in the air all the time. She, I'll never forget after I discovered that medical marijuana alleviated my symptoms, I was
Mm-hmm.
using cannabis and walked over to her by her desk and she flinched. And I thought, well, there's a learned behavior response if I ever saw one. And that's why I tell people every time I do one of these talks, if anybody's earned their place in heaven, it's my wife for sticking with me throughout that nightmare.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I like that. I like that. Bless the wives that stick with us really, for for those times that we struggle, right? My wife as well. She saved my life. I always say this because when I was going through those dark times for me, she's right there. She said she listens all the time, and when you're experiencing that, you have to have somebody in your corner that listens, right? And it could be different for me if not for her, because she took a lot of it. And when what happened was, when at what point she said she broke down too, and she said she made she's struggling too because of what's going on with me, and that's my turning point. And I'm like, I have to really take control of this. If not, I might lose my wife too. So she's been my rock, and bless the wives that you know stick with us through thick and thin.
Amen to that,
um
my friend. Amen to
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because I was unable to
uh
work. I couldn't work. I couldn't
mhm.
contribute to the
Yeah.
household income. I couldn't do any of that. And for like 13 years, I couldn't work at anything. I couldn't perform live music. Nobody would hire a crazy man knowingly. And
Mhm.
I'll never forget. I was so oblivious to how I looked to everyone else. There was a day that we went to rescue a dog. There was a big dog rescue thing, and we wanted to go get another dog. And we both remember that day very well as being a good day. We had a good time, but they asked us to pose for a picture with our dog, and I look like I'm ready to kill somebody. I had this furious look on my face. And we both remember that as a good day. On a good day, that I was still giving off that appearance of being furious,
Mhm.
completely oblivious to how, that I was that way. And it
Yeah.
just goes to show depression is and anxiety are they're liars. They're
Yeah.
liars that want to destroy the human that's unfortunate enough to experience
Yeah.
them. And I'm so lucky, and I thank God every night for teaching me about meat and water, because without meat and water, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation, because I would
Yeah.
be on the other side of the grass right now. I have no doubt.
Mhm. Yeah. That's incredible, man. That's incredible for a lot of people to hear, right? That's why your voice is always, you know, easily heard, because a lot of people resonate with it too. A lot of people are struggling, and a lot of people are struggling needlessly, right? Like I said, needlessly, because there's a way, right?
Absolutely.
There's there's a way. It's not. Sometimes it people think it's the hard route, but then when you think about it, it gives you so much freedom. I can really, I resonate with all everything that you're saying, because um for me it was about 6-7 years ago that happened to me, and followed by severe depression too. And when I look back, I'm like, that's the bottom of the bottom. There's For me, it's the only way is up from here, right? And I've experienced, if you're somebody who experienced that, everything, and when you get out of that, everything looks beautiful. The sun is beautiful. Just even rain is beautiful, because you just appreciate everything that's around you. And when if you know, right? It's not an it's a hard route, but when you got when you suddenly become free from that, you really become appreciative of that thing, which is now for us, it's a lifestyle, right? Um, man, I want to talk to you about the transition though for you when for people who are listening. How was that transition like for you going to first week on carnivore?
Well, I had been low carb for 2 years before I started carnivore.
Mm,
And so I didn't have a difficult transition. There was a couple weeks where I was kind of gassy. I had the
mm,
last headache that I've had since July of 2018. I remember that. Uh, and I had loose stool. I had loose stool for like the first 6 months I was carnivore. But I lost my depression symptoms on the 24th day. I didn't care if I had loose stool for the rest of my life. That was a win.
exactly right.
It took 6 months total to eliminate anxiety
Mm,
completely, and homemade bone broth kept me from killing people during that time. Um,
mm,
and the insomnia took about 10 months before it was completely gone. And my
mm,
symptoms have never come back. Now
mm,
there have been a couple of occasions where the crazy came back. What I call the crazy. I was diagnosed with major depression with psychotic features. And the psychotic features was the crazy part. Um, I learned I had to give up a job over this. I'd gotten when I went back to work, I'd gotten this job selling cell phones in a big box department store. People came to me. I didn't have to meet a quota. I got paid by the hour and plus commission, and I was pretty good at it because I'm a bit of a tech geek. But I couldn't eat when I was hungry. And then I would eat the same amount of meat every day, but I wasn't able to eat when I was hungry. Well, after working that job for 2 weeks, my wife and I have a disagreement. And I remember thinking, we're really putting a lot of energy into this argument, but I'm making some good points. Let's see where it goes. That's what I was thinking. And my wife finally throws up her hands and said, "You're talking just like you used to. You're not making any sense whatsoever." And I was like,
mm,
whoa, well, we need to figure that out. And the only thing that was different was I couldn't eat when I was hungry. I would have to eat later because inevitably, when it got close to where I could take a lunch, that would be when a customer would come up and I'd have to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours with them. And that brought the crazy back after just a couple of weeks. And my wife and I were like, well, there's no job on planet Earth worth risking that, not even for a moment. And then there was one time when we went to a Brazilian restaurant and just we went there to just eat meat, obviously. But we always like to go look at the quote unquote bar to see what kind of garbage was there. And because we kind of joke about that stuff now. And there was this mountainous pile of some of the most beautiful bacon I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, I just, did they know I was coming? I just couldn't believe there was this big thing of bacon there. And I got a plate, and because what could be wrong with bacon? I was eating it 3 times a day as a part of my daily meal thing. Bacon and
yeah.
lean ground beef. And so I got a bunch of bacon, and I grabbed 3 pieces and shoved them into my mouth, and I took the first bite, and I'm like, wait a minute, this has got sugar on it. They had
Mm,
based the bacon with brown sugar. Why in the world would you need to do that to bacon? Bacon's already perfect. It doesn't need assistance. But and we couldn't have conceived in a million years that there would be anything wrong with that bacon to look at it and to smell it because you couldn't smell anything sweet on it.
yep.
Well, it took me 3 days and a lot of medical marijuana to get back to my version of normal again because of that. Because
Mm,
again, that was the last time the crazy part of my symptoms ever put in an appearance. But I've never had a moment of depression. I've not had any anxiety whatsoever except what's appropriate to have. Loved one in a hospital, something like that. That's an appropriate time to feel some anxiety. But I was, The days of me curled up in the bed, clenching a pillow up against my chest, hoping for a heart attack, so the anxiousness would just go away. That's gone. It's never come
Mm.
back. Neither has the insomnia.
And you
And I'm
found a
just,
whole lot, a
like I
whole
said, I
new
thank God every
purpose in
night for the
life, right?
carnivore way of eating, because without it,
It's interesting where our
I,
life could take us.
there'd be no thankful carnivore. There'd be no guy out playing guitar at night
Hmm.
and bringing joy to people's lives. It just there would
Yeah.
be none of that.
I want to talk to you about, because this is so important now for somebody who had years and years of experience of taking psychiatric medications for your symptoms. It is really important to really navigate how to navigate if somebody is, interested in going carnivore or even keto or ketovore, whatever you want to call it, and reduce their medications. Can you go through how you did it yourself? What was going through at that time, and just go through steps on how can you really, taper down on those medications.
Well, first off, I want to encourage everybody who hears this to always talk to their doctor about how to titrate off. Have your doctor help you set up a titration schedule. Don't do what I did, because what I did was looking back on it was very risky. I mean, when I worked in the psychiatric hospital, one of the biggest issues that we had with return patients, recidivism, is they would take their meds as prescribed while they were in the hospital. When they get out of the hospital, their symptoms would be managed, etc. They would feel a lot better, but the medicines had the horrible side effects and they were very expensive. So, and
Mm.
because the patients, I'm talking mostly about folks with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia type people, and they would stop taking their meds. Well, when they stopped taking their meds, all their symptoms came back as if they had never been on meds. So it was always worse than it was the time before, and I didn't want to be one of those people. So whenever I was prescribed with a medication, I read everything I could about that medication, including the titration protocols, which you can find at all the pharmaceutical companies' websites if you're willing to dig and dig and dig and dig, because they don't make it clear. But you have to really search hard for it. But number one, don't stop taking your meds just because you started carnivore. That's the first thing. And one of the biggest mistakes people on medication can make is to stop taking their meds before they're healed. And some people have the errant notion that, oh, I'm on carnivore now, I won't need these meds. Well, one day you won't need those meds, but it won't happen quickly. I mean, even myself, my situation was very atypical. I healed from the depression in 24 days. I have no doubt, had I not been low carb for 2 years prior to that, it would have taken much longer, because I see in my own coaching, and when I used to lead the mental health meetings for Rivero, I saw it all the time that in real life, healing can take months for most people. It doesn't happen quickly for most people. And let your doctor set up you a titration schedule. And if you're going to be hard headed and do it like I did, you've got to follow those protocols. You've got to follow those titration protocols. You can't be in a hurry. You cannot just stop taking your medicine cold turkey. If
Hmm.
that puts you at immediate risk for what's known as antidepressant withdrawal syndrome, which I did experience. I don't recommend it. Imagine, if you will, Lawrence, what it might feel like if somebody took a warm washcloth and rubbed it directly onto your brain. I had that sensation for months and months and months. It's not, don't do that, guys. I'm telling you.
Hmm.
Follow your doctor's orders on that and make it clear. When you start feeling like you don't need medication anymore, that's the time to go to your doctor, your medical professional, and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on. Let's titrate off of these meds and see what happens. I think
Mm.
I'm not going to need them anymore. Now that's my
Mm.
recommendation. That's all I teach people, because doing it the way I did, if you how many people do you know that have experience working in the psych field who learned about all these medications and had to know about them to learn to recognize when a patient was getting too high a dosage through their behavior, their mannerisms,
Right.
etc. Not everybody gets that kind of training, and I had it. So I knew how to be careful with it, but I'm not the norm for most people. Thank God,
Mm.
because gosh, we'd all look good if we were all as bald as me.
Now we have all different experiences, and I know you've coached people to go on carnivore. There are different definitions, of carnivore. There's strict, there's moderate. Some people are more relaxed with it. Um, what advice do you have for someone who is struggling with mental health issues, and looking for an alternative approach like a carnivore diet, to manage their symptoms? How do they start? Where do they begin if somebody's not familiar with low carb, or maybe just but they're desperate
Hmm.
to make a change? What are sort of your um,
Well, the first thing I do with the
advice?
client is I gauge how sick are they? How much
Hmm.
energy do they have? How much information can they process at a single time? Um, I mean, I recently had a client who was obviously very, very ill on a lot of meds, and they were having difficulty speaking. And when you're having, because of medications, you're having trouble speaking, you're also having serious trouble processing what you're hearing. Um, but what I always recommend is I don't get into strict carnivore and all that kind of stuff. Humans like to complicate simple things. And I just teach what I learned when I studied how to succeed at this way of eating. I was blessed to find the Zeroing In on Health group on Facebook, and that's where Kelly Hogan, Charles Washington, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, where those folks all gathered for years, and they still are. Um, Kelly's 13 years carnivore now. That's where I found the directions on how to succeed. And that's what I teach all my clients. The first time I ever talk with a coaching client, one of the first things I do is I give them these same directions. And they're so bloody simple. It's ridiculous how simple they are. But when you follow them, they're incredibly effective. Number one, only eat when you're hungry. We don't eat by the clock anymore. I don't look at the clock and think, oh man, it's about lunchtime.
Hmm.
I let my body tell me when it's hungry. And when my body says I need food, I don't wait. I don't wait around. I go cook some food and I eat it. Number two, when you're hungry, only eat meat until you're not another bite full. You want to be completely satiated. That's pretty simple. There's nothing confusing about that. Number three, only eat the meat that you crave, that satisfies you, that you can afford. Now, if I could afford it, I would eat filet mignon and bacon, but I can't afford filet mignon every day. I can't afford it but once a year, maybe twice a year tops. So I discovered through trial and error that lean ground beef and bacon was the perfect, most satisfying combination of meats I could ever possibly consume. Number
Mhm.
four, this is the key to everything. Under no circumstance do I ever put a sweet taste into my mouth, whether it's natural or otherwise, because all consuming sweet taste does is perpetuate the misery. And then we encourage people to be patient, trust their body, and trust the process, because as human beings, we're genetically designed to thrive eating only meat and drinking only water. And I always get a crack, get kick, get a chuckle when how could you just eat meat? And I'm like, well, why do you think just eating meat's so bad? And you're not saying anything about the fact I only drink water. I always find that rather humorous. And I just tell them, listen, I'm not consuming anything inflammatory. That's the key. not to consume inflammatory materials.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we don't consume inflammatory materials, our body doesn't have to work so hard to keep the inflammatory materials from killing us. And it can repair ourselves. It can repair our bodies. The brain fog, it becomes immensely reduced till it's gone. And then our brain starts to operate as it was designed to operate. And then it's like what you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about earlier. It's like somebody opens a window into a whole new world once that takes place. And, life still throws challenges at us, but they're so much easier to navigate when your brain's not on fire from consuming garbage. I hope that answered your question.
No, no, that's great. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, like you said, ask a lot of questions. Like, um, you know, it's a great point that humans make a lot of things complicated, and you said, you know, just eat when you're hungry, right? It's so simple. You should just follow that. I mean, for somebody like you said you've been uh, eating this way for 1,700 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's an incredible feat to do, and it's I I I am myself can't say that I've been that consistent, but it says a lot about how you are so uh, just really focused on being disciplined, and for not only for yourself but also for the people who look up to you, for the clients that you have, for the people who watches you, and you just become just a great leader in that sense, right? um,
Thank you for that.
of course, I want to say I want to be able to help the people that wants to start this diet, right? How do you respond to should they respond to critics? Who says that meat only diet is unhealthy, or not sustainable long term?
Well,
How should they respond?
how should they respond? Well,
Mm,
it's always about we don't know what we don't know a good bit of the time. And for new people, I would just encourage them not to pay any attention to the negativity, because people who are throwing negativity at you aren't going to listen. So my advice is always stay on task with your eating, keep following the directions, and become the example they cannot ignore. I joke about the fact my wife waited till I survived my first 30 days carnivore. She wanted to wait and see if I was going to die or not. And because she suffered from osteoarthritis in her shoulders and in her hands, and she eliminated all of that in just 6 weeks, eating meat and drinking water.
mm,
So we're enjoying the carnivore lifestyle together, which is another beautiful thing
very rare,
because
was
when
beautiful.
you only eat meat and drink water, your hormones come into balance. When your hormones come into balance, all your plumbing works as it was designed to work, no matter how old you are,
Hmm.
and your libido comes back full force. And we feel like we're living a fairy tale half the time because she's 64, I'm 62, and our libidos are in better shape than they were when we were in our 20s. And that's not hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. That's a true fact. And so our quality of life is just insanely good. Our
Hmm.
marriage is insanely good. Our level of communication is vastly improved. And we don't hold grudges like we used to. It used to be one of us to tick the other one off, carry it around for 3 or 4 days. We don't waste time with that nonsense now. Um, Repeat your question again because I'm not sure if I've answered it fully yet.
No, you did, you
Okay.
did. It's just about just what how can you know people who wants to start this diet
Yeah.
answer to
Okay. The
critics.
critics. I trusted Jordan Peterson. I trusted what Dr. Sean Baker and Amber. I trusted those people to be telling me the truth because their credentials are above reproach.
Mm,
And everything that they told me that would take place actually occurred. So once you've got that,
Yeah.
what can a critic say? Plus, for me now, 1,725 days of eating meat and drinking water.
Yeah.
When something, I heard for ages, well, I hope you like going to the emergency room to have your arteries cleaned out, and I hope you like having heart attacks. And basically, it was vegans telling me they hoped I died from it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Suicidal.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. And you're going to gain all that weight you lost back, and this is going to happen. And ketosis is dangerous. Oh my gosh, ketones. Oh, none of it came true. The opposite occurred.
The opposite happened.
The opposite occurred. I haven't had a bad day yet. Every day
Mm-hmm.
continues to be better than the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought that was possible.
Mm-hmm.
None of the negative predictions have remotely come close to occurring. My lab work, I have less than a 0.4% chance of experiencing a cardiovascular event. Now, that's not zero, but it's pretty darn
Mm-hmm.
close.
Yeah.
And I had a doctor tell me, he said, "You keep eating meat, man, you may live forever." And I'm like, no, 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 no. My heart's warranty doesn't go that long. One day it'll quit beating and it'll be game over, but it won't be suffering. One day my heart will just quit, and that'll be fine because we all are on a time limit here. None of us are going to be here eternally. I don't
But doesn't mean you have to struggle,
exactly. You
right?
can enjoy your quality of life, and at the age of 62, I am excited about becoming older because I know I don't have to fall apart. I don't have
Mm.
to lose
Love it.
skills. I don't have to, need a cane or a walker to get around. I don't have to do any of that as long as I keep eating this way. The future looks amazing. As a musician, I'm performing at a level now of proficiency I never thought I would ever reach. I mean, I'm
Love it.
getting to jam with touring musicians now. And last night something happened. I was at a jam night, one of the premier jam nights in all the whole area of Jacksonville, Florida, which has got a rich music tradition in this area. And I got my second ever standing ovation last night, and it caught me so off guard because I was
Mm.
thinking, well, that sounds pretty good, but I could have done this better and I could have done that better. I'm always my worst critic.
Yeah.
But when we finished the song, and then suddenly there's 75 people up on their feet. Uh,
Wow.
Without Carnivore, none of that happens.
Mm.
None of it ever takes place. There's pictures of me performing before when I was crazy, and I look in my mind, I remember the
Yeah.
gig, I remember the job. I was having a blast inside my
Mm.
head, but what was being projected outward was rage. I just looked pissed off. I didn't look like I was having any fun at all. But now every note of every song I play is just pure joy. And I'm so thankful that I get to do this at this level now.
Mm.
And some of my dreams, I've always dreamed of touring, even if it's just regionally. I've never been after fame or fortune. Well, a little fortune would be good because I'd like to pay my bills. Just a little bit. I'm not greedy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see a ceiling to what I can accomplish now as long as I'm willing to put the effort in to improve, which I'm able to do daily. I practice 4 to 6 hours almost every day of the week.
Yeah.
And it's paying off. Without
Yeah.
Carnivore, though, none of that occurs.
None of that occurs. Yeah. Nothing that you spoken about. None of this that you're experiencing. You're able to do all of these things because of Carnivore.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
And I love what you said there when you said, a lot of these people like Dr. Sean Baker, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Amber O'Hearn, all of those people resonated with you. I urge people to, find somebody you resonate with, really learn about this way of eating, because when the critic asks you something, obviously you shout out the negativity, but at the same time, you really want to educate them as well, right? If you're ready if you really know the stuff and you really dug into the science and how it works, you can really actually help somebody, right? That critic can turn into a believer. You can turn that person into a believer too. And so don't be afraid in, talking about this, because, even though there's one person that may listen, that's still worth it. That's still worth a shot, right? And a critic can be a believer if you have the right information for them, right? Well, Coach Brett, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story here. I want our listeners to be able to find you. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at thankful.carnivore. That dot is very important, so remember to put that in there between the two words. Uh, I'm also on Instagram at Stickman Bleeding. It's StickmanBleedin. Do not add a G. You can also find me under my name, Brett Lloyd, on Facebook. And if you got questions about the carnivore way of eating or anything remotely related to this lifestyle, I'm happy to take your questions in private and answer them to the best of my ability.
Awesome. We'll have everything down in the description box below for y'all who's interested in connecting with Brett. Thank you so much, Coach Brett, for coming on once again.
Well, Lawrence, I appreciate the invite. I always enjoy talking with you, and I hope a year from now we do it again, because people need to know they're not broken. They do not have to suffer needlessly anymore. You can eliminate all these metabolic illnesses, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, mental illness, etc. You can eliminate it, not just get better, but to become well by no longer consuming anything inflammatory. And you're going to experience a quality of life you never dreamed was possible.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, sir, for saying that. And for anyone that's listening to that who may resonate with that, there's a lot of hope for us. And Coach Brett here is, is one of the guys that really are, living the life, living the dream now because of this way of living. So, Coach Brett, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lawrence. Be well and take care of yourself.